Greetings, writers. It's Mr. Hebda from the Lackawanna College Writing Center, and today we're going to talk about the introduction paragraph. In particular, how we can structure it. So not everything in life has a convenient formula for success, but thankfully the introduction paragraph does. And if we think of every paragraph as having about 5 sentences, we can use that knowledge to build an outline for the introduction paragraph that'll guide us through sentence by sentence. Our first sentence in the introduction paragraph should be a hook or an attention grabber. This sentence has 2 goals. It needs to draw in the reader's attention, but it should also orient the reader to the subject matter of the essay or the topic of the essay. I'll probably do a whole video on how to write hooks because hooks can be challenging, but that's a good introduction to them. All right, next we'll be explaining some background information that the reader would need to know in order to understand the rest of the essay. And this will expand more on the subject matter that's introduced in the hook. But it can also include definitions of important words that the reader might need to know, or even history as well, depending on the topic. Lastly, we'll wrap up the introduction paragraph with a thesis statement. Now, the thesis statement is the most important sentence in your essay and deserves a video of its own, which will be on its way, so keep an eye out for that one. For now, all you need to know is that the thesis statement is what you're trying to persuade or convince the reader of. All right, so another way that we can think about the introduction is to think of it using this visual aid. Look at the introduction paragraph as an upside-down pyramid, and we can fit in our different sentences from the outline into that diagram. And the reason why it's really helpful to think of the introduction paragraph this way is because it gives us a sense of how the flow of ideas in the paragraph should move. So we want to move from general ideas at the top with our hook. The base of the pyramid, right, is very broad, so we'll start off with broad ideas. And then as we move through the background information, as we get through each of the following sentences, right, we'll get more and more specific, more and more narrow, just as the pyramid itself narrows to a tip at the very bottom. The thesis should be our most specific sentence in the introduction paragraph. All right, so how do we put all of these sorts of rules into action? How do we actually build an introduction paragraph with this knowledge? So I have an example paragraph for you here for a compare and contrast essay, but these rules can be used for any type of essay. Feel free also to pause the video to take a closer look at how I transition between the different sentences so you can see how the flow of ideas works. All right, let's get started with the hook. All right, I have it outlined here in red. Many people do not realize that there is more than one sport called football. So this hook works because it's broad, it's general, it's talking to many people, it's casting the net wide. And it also introduces the subject matter of the essay, which is football. So believe it or not, even though football might be something you are quite familiar with, you may be quite familiar with, I have in green here an explanation of what football is. Because your reader might not know what football is. And it's better to explain a little more than not to explain enough and assume the reader would just know what football is. So here I kind of gave different definitions to the definition of American football versus football in other countries. So that's a good example of how you can kind of give some background information to orient the reader for the rest of the essay. Lastly, here in blue, we have our thesis statement. So here, remember, we're trying to persuade the reader. We want to convince them of something. And since this is a compare and contrast example, we're trying to convince the reader here that the 2 different kinds of football have more differences than things in common. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Check out the Lackawanna College Writing Center YouTube channel for more videos, and keep on writing. Mr. Hebda, out.